without further ado, I'll pass this over to Gabriella to introduce the rest of the panel. Thank you very much.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to meet with us this afternoon. My name is Gabriella Price. I'm a director of the Industry Solutions team at MongoDB, and I will be moderating this panel. It is honestly my immense pleasure to be sharing the stage with some really awesome, talented, intelligent women. I'm very excited to hear from your insights today. And overall, we have about 45 minutes. We'll reserve the last 10, 15 minutes for open Q&A from the audience. So let's go ahead and kick things off. I'd like to introduce our panelists. If you guys can each just start by sharing your name, your role. You can share a little bit about what you do. And also if you can share just a hobby that you like to do outside of work that has nothing to do with work, so we can get to know you a little better would be great. So we can start with Celeste.
Sure. I am Celeste. I'm a Senior Director of Product at DraftKings. I oversee our AI product. So this is a new role. I'm shifting from a product design role into supporting the enterprise in our AI transformation, helping individual teams to build out agents. For hobbies, I have a 9 and a 7-year-old, so my hobbies generally have to align with what they want to do. Lately, that looks like my daughter and I have picked up sewing because we're watching Project Runway together, and she right now is an aspiring fashion designer, so we're having a bit of fun trying to make things on a sewing machine. And I'm really enjoying working with my hands, getting off screen on the weekends.
I've been through a Project Runway phase myself.
Yes.
I understand it. You really think that you can make a ball gown in 24 hours.
Exactly. Don't tell me about last week, though. I haven't caught up yet.
All right, Vinitha?
Hello, everybody. My name is Vinuta Ram. I am from Cognizant TriZetto. I am a general manager. I oversee their platform products division as part of the TriZetto Healthcare Products Group. So a lot of platforms relative to integrations are Unify, which is payer-provider convergence, and most recently a little bit of AI as well. I live in Princeton, New Jersey, and of course I have two teenage daughters, and like you, Celeste, a lot of my hobbies and free time is influenced by what they want to do, and their hobbies become mine. But when I'm not following their lead, I'm usually, I like to do crossword puzzles a lot. So any type of crossword puzzles, logic puzzles, that's what gets me going. I'll hand it to you. Yeah.
Hi everyone, I am Mary Fish. I am from Boston, Massachusetts, and I am the SVP of the HP platform and Prince software. So been at HP about 4 years approaching, which is kind of crazy. In terms of what I like to do in my free time, I think we're all at that phase where I don't know that I have much, but I am super into whatever my kids are into. And I have one special kid that is really into Harry Potter right now. So we did the movies first, which made it a little bit easier, but now we're going back and reading the books. So awesome.
Oh, that's amazing. Awesome. So as the first question, just to understand your career path a little bit, each of you are in executive positions. You're senior leaders. Is this something that you really wanted to pursue? Or was it a path that you were just kind of pushed into in your career? Whoever wants to start.
I'll start. So most places that I've worked have had sort of a player-coach mentality with leadership, and I think that really has helped me to find a path into leadership. I think I would have a really hard time pursuing a purely managerial role without keeping my hands somewhat on the work. So I would say that it's been sort of a calling where I'm really driven by on-the-ground innovation and incremental development and wanting to help teams, and so I think it's been sort of a natural evolution, and where that's become less project-based, it's been more treating a team or a function as something that we're designing and building together. So that has been sort of my progression into leadership, is really staying close to the work and innovating with teams and trying to scale the innovation that we're doing.
Sure.
I guess I can go as well. Somewhat similar to you. I think it started first primarily by chance, if you will. Working in a team, as you get more experience and you become a little bit more of the senior lead, you kind of, at least I fell into those roles where I started becoming the technical lead. And I really enjoy doing both, right? Coaching people plus delivering software products. But more recently, I found that it's by choice that I seek out positions where I can be a leader and mentor others. I feel like I feel a lot more accomplished and fulfilled when I'm able to get people to the next level rather than just delivering another increment of functionality. I don't get that feeling of joy anymore just by creating a software product.
Yeah, so similar answer. I'm always super impressed by the few people that know what they want to be really early in life. That wasn't me. But when I did start out, I quickly found that I actually enjoyed leading, found that very natural. And then once I was doing it, it became clear that I wanted that to be the path. So I guess you could say, if I were answering the question, I fell into it, but then became very purposeful about it, probably about 5 years into my career.
All right, nice. And now moving in a little bit to technology, as senior leaders, which technology trend do you feel is impacting your industry the most? How is it shaping the way you lead?
Sure. I think probably most people here would say AI right now is really reshaping everything. I think the way that that's changing the way that I'm thinking as a leader really has to do with thinking about roles in a different way, where, in the past, a product manager maybe is only writing specs and not even attempting to build prototypes for what it is that they're building. We're starting to look at new and emerging roles and calling roles like low code resources versus pro code, and looking at blending and blurring those lines between roles for different pods that we're setting up. So I think that really is shaping the way that we're thinking about leading teams, is just not being so rigid with the boundaries between roles. And really looking at augmenting fresh roles with AI. So this past year, DraftKings has done a lot around our brand tone of voice and improved copywriting across all of our consumer-facing applications. We don't have a full copywriting team for that, and it's something that we've helped to augment through AI. So I think just thinking about AI as a thought partner or a function that you can bring on to teams really helps us to scale and think differently about how we lead teams.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I do agree. I think everyone's going to say AI right now. I don't think there's really another answer. But in AI, you were talking about roles. We're spending a lot of time managing senior leaders' expectations around productivity and the new ways of working that comes with AI. And so you see a lot of things in the news, like 90% code, all of these things. And so we're trying to manage both the pressure of delivering and truly transforming into a way where we're using agentic, but also managing the expectations of sometimes we don't even have the foundational elements down, the basics down, and now we're being forced to kind of change and transform even quicker while keeping everything going. So it has changed my leadership style in a lot because of the amount of ambiguity that we've inserted into this. The way that I look at it is this has got to be one of the most uncertain times in our industry in a very, very long time, right? And so when we're being asked for projections and estimates, I feel like I'm pulling out a crystal ball at this point, and just managing and making decisions with the amount of information I have and really pivoting quickly, right?
Okay, so you mentioned ambiguity. So something that I'm curious about is, really navigating through ambiguity has become this norm. How do you all really navigate through real uncertainty for yourself and leading your teams through uncertainty as well, in whatever way that shows up in your role?
I can start, right? So I think the biggest thing for us in leading through ambiguity is leaning into purpose, not plan, right? What is the purpose? What are we trying to achieve? How are we going to achieve it? And the plan part of it is going to get blown up 1,000 different times. So I think it's really important that we don't get stuck on what we committed to and then not pivoting from that, right? So it's making sure that the team has the stability and the vision, not exactly on how we're gonna get there, to stabilize them and keep them motivated, right? I think the other aspect of that is it really forces us to communicate better, right? What they say about communication is the greatest illusion is that it happened, right? So making sure that you are communicating frequently with everyone to bring people along on this ambiguity and reminding them of the purpose of what we're trying to do. And then I said it earlier, but it is about making decisions with the information that you have, which is super hard in our field, right? Because we want all the data at all times to make a decision, but we're not going to have it. So how do you make a decision based on that 70% and say, is that good enough? But then making sure that you, your organization, and the culture around you allows you to revisit that and change the plan when it inevitably needs to be changed, right?
That's a great response. Just going back to core purpose, like you said, objectives, company values, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, you said it really well, right? It's spot on. You got to start somewhere, right? Take that leap of faith, and the way will follow, right? I think too often organizations tend to get into the analysis paralysis mode, and it's almost impossible to make progress if you can't even take the first step, right? So I think ambiguity is always going to be a factor in all our lives, and we can be afraid of it. We just got to lean into it and take the first step, and things will become visible.
Yeah, no, I really love your answer, and I agree. I think a lot of my job is about, in some ways, putting blinders on for teams so that they can continue to put one foot in front of the other and not being overwhelmed with trying to take everything on all at once, especially to your point about having a good foundation for AI. I think there's plenty of work that we need to do just to prepare our data, build automations, document process and workflows that it's not that ambiguous. We can actually take some basic foundational steps as part of our overall transformation journey.
Now, to get a little vulnerable, I'm curious, what's a time where you faced a really serious doubt or challenge in your career? It could be as a leader, it could be as an individual contributor, and what did you do to work through that?
Sure, mine is fairly recent. So I mentioned I started in product design and UX, and I've been at DraftKings for 4.5 years, 4 of those being situated within the product design role. I really got interested in AI from that vantage point, using generative AI to improve our processes, asset creation, and really like amplify what it is that we were able to build on the product design side. This ended up leading to me getting noticed outside of my role and asked to step into this much broader role that has enterprise level exposure, a lot more interaction with directly our founders and ELT and senior leaders across the company. I was approached initially by my boss and then by my boss's boss, and I declined both times that I was offered this position. And I just really felt for myself, I wasn't sure that I was ready. I was feeling a lot of self-doubt, like that I wanted to take what I had been building for my own team and in a realm where I was very comfortable and taking that to a broader stage. Finally, one of our founders put time on my calendar and talked with me directly about taking the role and really encouraged me to let the doubt by the wayside and take the role. And I think I really needed to confront that, if all these smart people are thinking that I am capable of taking on this role, like I should listen to them and try to let go of the imposter syndrome and really step into that. So it's been about 6 months. It's definitely a bigger role and a lot more responsibility and sense of urgency. The work is extremely exciting, and I'm learning a ton. So, and I've gotten to meet people like Zach at MongoDB and given opportunities like this to speak here. So I'm really glad that I took the role.
Nice, that's amazing.
Thank you.
Mine's a little bit in the past, right? I think it was about 8 or 9 years ago. I was purely on the software engineering side, leading technical teams, and I was reaching the stage where architecture and building products technically was just not cutting it. I was not feeling that sense of accomplishment, right? And I wanted to switch to product management and also maybe something that was customer facing, right? And I was, and as luck would have it, circumstances in my life, I found myself living with my family at that time in West Lafayette, Indiana. I don't know if you've ever heard of that place, but it's the home of Purdue University, right? So you have Purdue University and miles and miles and miles of cornfields, right? That's all you have there. But, I said, all right, I have a university, a world-class university right in my own backyard. What could I do? So I started working at Purdue University. They were undergoing a large HR transformation at that side, and they were willing to accommodate any kind of role that I wanted. So I took a role which was implementation. I've never done implementation in my life, right? I was a techie till that point. I took a role in implementation, interacted with all university administrative officials, outside vendors, etc. That was literally my first experience, right, working with these different people. And very quickly, within a month or two, I'm like, oh my God, I'm scared to go into these conversations. I don't know these business terms. So I have this university. I started an executive MBA program at the university. It was part-time. But alongside the role, I was building up skills. I got to apply the skills that I was learning in my day-to-day job, right? And once I finished that, I was able to make the switch into product management. And now I lead a team of both, right? Product managers and engineers, and I can equally speak both languages. So I think that discomfort that pushes you to do something is really, it's hard when you're with it or in it, but once you get past that, you'll see how much more you can do, right, when you get past that stage.
You're good. All right, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And so I'm curious, you're all leaders, you run your own orgs. From your own experiences, as leaders, we really have to balance assertiveness with collaboration, okay? How do you really balance assertiveness as a leader when assertiveness can be interpreted a certain way based on gender? Does that show up at all?
Yes. Okay, so just go affirmative on that one, right? So the good old double bind, right? If we're too collaborative, then we're weak. If we're too assertive, we're a BIT space MUCH. You see what I did there? That almost created a divorce in my marriage once, right? You know, the way that I look at it is when it comes to being assertive, I try to reframe it as a positive. I'm definitely assertive, but I'm also really clear in what I'm looking for, and I'm respectful in the way that I ask for it. So if you want to call that assertive, sure, but I call it clear. Clear is kindness, and frame it in respect. And when it comes to collaboration, I think that is the furthest thing from a weakness. I think it's one of the greatest strengths you can actually have, is your ability as a leader, male or female, to bring people along with you, right? And that's the way that you actually become a successful leader, regardless of gender, is if people are leading with you and driving into the change that you're actually doing. But I think, you know, I speak for a lot of women when this is a huge problem that we face, and it's truly a really crappy double standard that I don't think anyone has a real good way of getting out of. Now, I think it also goes down to your culture and the people you surround yourself with, right? I think being an assertive, collaborative woman is a great thing, but I do think you need both mentorship, but more importantly, sponsorship of people that are like-minded, right? And that requires both females supporting females, which we all need to do better at, and male allyship, which we should never underestimate the power and the importance of that.
Just amen. Agree with everything you said.
All right, awesome. Mary, you mentioned having a good mentor, some good sponsorship. Throughout your career growth, how valuable has it been building a support network for yourself? How have you put yourself out there to cultivate mentorship and sponsorship? Whoever wants to start.
Okay. Yeah, so I think it's obviously incredibly important, right? I think when you're first starting your career, it's about mentorship and getting those foundational skills. Mm-hmm. I think as you get further in your career, it becomes about sponsorship. Mm-hmm. I always tell everyone the way that promotions happen is the same way that you pick your kickball team. Let that sink in, right? So it's all about who likes you, who your friends are. People want to be able to work with you. So and as women, there is a point where we have to be even more mindful about that shift in your career, where it goes from having mentorship to having real allyship. And I think that's going to be the difference between you and your next spot. And honestly, it's something that sometimes it's come really easy to me. And for example, in my current role, it's not coming easy, right? So I think and that also goes to making sure you're in the right spot too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and one of the things I think that's helped is not just one person that's a mentor or a sponsor, but also having your own board, right, or your own council. And it does not have to be only at the company that you work. It could be people from your network. It could be people that you trust, your former colleagues, your classmates, your whoever that may be. I think having somebody that you can trust, that you can rely on for career advice, sometimes even if they're not directly involved in your day-to-day job, definitely does help.
Yeah, I definitely want to plus one that your personal board. That's something that I've definitely been cultivating for years, is former colleagues that are part of my personal board, both women and men, but frankly, primarily women that face some of the same challenges that I feel that I do. And as a result of that, I've definitely been more deliberate about offering myself up to other folks, of consider me part of your group of people to consult with, even if we are not working together in the future. And I do that with both women and men, but I think something that has been a positive change I've seen over time in my career is women being more comfortable asking explicitly for mentorship, where I think earlier in my career I don't think I witnessed that as much, and I've definitely seen that with younger folks today, sort of being more clear about, I'd love to maintain time on your calendar, and will you be a mentor of mine? And I definitely welcomed that and want to pay it forward.
Those are really great tips. I'm curious, from your own experience, what kind of career advice would you give for someone starting their career versus someone who's midpoint in their career wanting to aspire to be executive level leaders?
Oh, so many things. I think one of the challenges that I've had, and maybe this will get to another one of your questions about something I wish that I could tell myself in the past, and that I definitely am sharing with new managers, is that, and this is more particular for newer managers, is that you don't have to please everybody. And I think for myself, I certainly spent a lot of time as a younger manager focusing on the people in the room that I needed to convert, like the quotes about comedians focusing on that one person in the audience who isn't laughing. I think that can be a real time and energy suck, and sort of try to cut out those energy vampires and really focus on the full and more cohesive team. And not everybody needs to like you, that's okay. I don't need to be everybody's cup of tea, but it took me quite a few years to come to that realization. So I certainly mentor newer managers on that and try to make them feel comfortable to not always be well liked.
Well, recently I was thinking about this question, right? And I was like, okay, if I consider myself somewhere at the midpoint of my career and I was to write a letter to my past self, I think I have, and by the way, this could be a cliche, but whatever. It's an ABC, right, advice. One, to be authentic. I think that's something that all of us struggle with at different points in our life for various reasons. But I think at the end of the day, you're happiest in your role and you bring most value to your job, to everything that you do if you're your true authentic self. And number two, this was something that I learned much later in life, is to be bold. So that's the B, right? Ask for what you want. Nobody's going to hand it to you on a platter. Nobody's here to read your mind. Ask for it. Be bold. Take that first step. And C is collaboration, right? You have to be collaborative. You're going to get nowhere if you're not collaborative. It doesn't matter. It's not about taking away credit, getting the limelight on you. People will like you and support you more if you're collaborative. So that's my ABC for somebody who's starting out or somebody mid-career, and even for myself, maybe a few years down the line.
That's great, I agree. So if I break it up into two different parts, right? The first part of, people starting out their career, I think what I would say is just say yes, right? And then go figure it out. You're so early, and I don't want to say this in a negative way, but the expectations are low, right? So say yes, and then go figure it out. And while you're figuring it out, build your foundational skill sets that you actually need to grow, right? And then from there, start planting the seeds of growing your actual network. From, there in the next several years as you approach the mid part of your career, I think it's much less about being that subject matter expert that you are for maybe the first 10 years and pivoting into managing and leading others in most people's career, right? So how do you make that shift? I think it also then becomes about, moving from a network to mentorship and sponsorship. But I think if you step back, when you look at that next level, it's less about what you do and then it becomes more about the brand that you want for yourself, right? When you get to that mid-level, what do you want people to know you for, and start to build and shape that message around what you want people to say and think about you, right? Building your ecosystem and network.
Nice. Talking about career growth, it can be difficult to know when is the right time to pivot in your career, whether it means a new role, studying a new area of expertise, joining a new company. How have you navigated those types of decisions? What kind of advice would you give for someone who wants to make a change but maybe is hesitant or scared, doesn't know where to start?
So I would say, you say sometimes you don't know. I would say more often than not, you do. Right? Especially men, I don't know what you have, but I know we have intuition, right? And I know our moms tell us to lean into it. So I think often when you have that feeling in the pit of your stomach that it's probably time to go, it probably is, right? But I do think you need to look at both the internal and the external signals to verify that, right? And what I mean by that is internally is, are you still growing? Are you getting more out of the company than you're putting in? Is it still a culture fit for you? And then externally, what's going on? What do you want to be? Is your next move going to get you there? But I think it's really important that you listen to those signals and then you use that data to move when it's right, the right opportunity, right? Everyone always tells you, make sure you're running to something. I still think that's sage advice, but I do think you have to listen to your intuition when it's time to go. I think people hold on too long and I think it hurts your career.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you know more often than you don't. Follow your gut. One strategy that has always worked for me, and I mean, I love spreadsheets, okay? Pros and cons, right? Make a list, and the answer will stare right back at you once you do that. So I think that's just a practical strategy I use for pretty much everything. But if you find yourself in a situation you don't know what to do and you're not sure what's the right move, write down pros and cons, and you'll find out very soon what you want to do.
Yeah, I think for me, I really am always looking at what learning opportunities are available for me, and I have sort of a very visceral reaction, wanting to stay up late working on something fresh. Like if I still have that energy and passion towards something, like there is a fertile pathway there for me to stay where I'm at. When that starts to dwindle and I stop, getting excited, it becomes pretty clear. But I've always found that there usually is something for me to learn in any role, and when I'm starting to, for me it's not so easy parsing out my gut that I should go versus I'm coming up against something that I'm afraid of and that I actually need to barrel through it. So I think I've tried to lean in a bit more on those opportunities where like my initial reaction is maybe fear-based and I want to step away from something, but I've had good examples like I described earlier of just saying, just go for it, and then found a whole new area for me to explore and learn and grow.
Awesome. Well, your insights so far have been so awesome. It's been cool and very interesting hearing your experiences. I do want to go ahead and open it up to the audience to see if anyone has any questions at all, and we'll have our MC share a mic. And we will need some headphones up here as well, just so we can hear the questions.
Sorry.
Can everyone hear me?
For 1 second,
Okay.
sorry.
Thank you.
This is exciting. I wanted one of these.
All right, I think
All
we're
right.
good.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So, as a fellow Harry Potter nerd, Mary, what is your favorite Harry Potter movie?
Goblet of Fire.
Okay.
Is that okay?
I'm Prisoner of Azkaban, but
Okay.
that
That's
works.
my daughter's favorite, but Goblet of Fire.
Strong contenders.
Yeah.
All right. So I have a follow-up question for Celeste. Obviously, you're leading AI product at DraftKings. DraftKings, highly regulated industry. regulated industries and AI don't typically go hand in hand. So where do you see the biggest opportunities for AI to shape the betting and gaming industry?
I wouldn't say this is specific necessarily to betting and gaming, but really the way that we're looking at this is all about internal productivity and efficiency, and really taking this as an opportunity for us to rethink our workflows where I think there are particular areas of the business that, since we've been so focused on speed to market and wanting to make sure that we're getting out the next best thing that is available for us to release to the market, this is a great opportunity for us to look at tech debt that exists across the organization and clean that up. You're right that there's certainly a lot of issues with exposing AI to the customer in a regulated industry, and that's why we're sort of focusing on that internal productivity and really looking to build out agents where they're going to benefit our workforce the most.
Awesome, good question.
Hi, Vinuta, you spoke a little bit about how the work you were doing as an engineer in the technical field at least, was not as fulfilling, and that was sort of like the reason you moved towards PM or something else. As someone who is technical and wants to stay technical, I grapple with this question a lot as well, but I think for me the question would be, do you feel like there is space for non-technical skills in a technical role, or does that need to fulfill a bit more like customer-centric or like soft skills, I guess? I hate that term, but does that kind of push you towards more of a C-suite, PM sort of managerial role?
Well, sorry, there's an echo. All right. Well, I think there's always space for technical people in the C-suite, right? CTOs, CIOs are by nature technical, right? And if you look at all the startups today, a lot of them come from technical people sitting in their garage starting to type something, or maybe not in a garage, in a dorm, wherever it is. I continue to stay closely aligned to our tech team. What I said was, for me, writing code and writing beautiful architected code was not as fulfilling anymore. I think now more than ever, that kind of design thinking, that higher level thinking that you use in technology is way more critical than actually knowing how to code, because AI can do that for us, right? And I think that's where people who are technical can bring most value. People who are non-technical can use AI tools and spin up prototypes and so on, but nobody can uncover or unravel the spaghetti code that AI produces. So I think there's a lot of stuff that technical people, truly technical people at heart, have to look forward to. And some of the things that I've seen over the course of my 20-year career is, like, we started writing code in C++ and Java, and when C# came along and we didn't have to free memory anymore, it felt like Microsoft did all our work for us. But applications became more complex, right? And I think this is just an evolution of that. We start writing and focusing on solving problems which are a lot more complex using technology, and therefore people who have those skills, those higher level skills, are going to be much more in demand in the future.
Really quick question here for each of you. And it's around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the change in landscape around it. My number one question is, how important is it to your companies, and how are you all each addressing the issue at this time?
I can start, since I still have the microphone. I think, at least for Cognizant, it continues to remain important. Diversity of opinion, having everybody have equal opportunities, and including people is what makes us successful and profitable as a company, right? We're tackling it more in the context of the company's culture itself, rather than just another initiative under a name that we need to fulfill. I think we see the value of it every single day. The more you bring in people, whether it's from different countries, functions across the organization, or different experiences, educational backgrounds be it, or like for me, for instance, I never had a healthcare background before I joined my current role, right? And yet I am asked to provide input into healthcare strategy. And I think stuff like that is important because it brings completely different perspective to that entire situation. So regardless of whether an initiative by a certain name is important or not, I continue to believe that the underlying principles of that are really relevant for our work.
Yeah, for DraftKings, I want to give a shout out to our Chief People Officer, Linda Aiello, because my vantage point being on the SLT is that she has not taken the foot off the gas on those initiatives. In fact, we've seen that even grow more. This past year, we had our first in-person Women's Summit for DraftKings, and that grew out of a more organic initiative starting within the engineering org 2 years ago. That grew to both the product and engineering orgs working together last year for an in-person summit, and then Linda and her team have taken that to be global summit, and it's for women across the company, and then a secondary session that's focused on just women leaders in the company. We also had a huge presence at Render ATL this year, and I just think that entire org has really, again, leaned in on that space rather than taking their foot off the gas, which has been fantastic.
Yeah, great question. I think at HP, similar, right? It's part of our core belief that diversity matters, and that hasn't changed regardless of the environment around it, right? It really is part of our core beliefs. We call it the HP way, but it's the culture of the company. Now, I think we as women and senior leaders also have a responsibility to make sure that we perpetuate that throughout our organizations, and so I know for myself personally, that's something that I continue to apply a lot of positive pressure towards my team to make sure that we really are getting the best candidate and making sure that we are keeping diversity and inclusion in mind while we do that. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, we want our products and to reflect our customers who are using them, who are diverse, right?
This is a question for Mary. Mary, you spoke about the double bind of balancing assertiveness and collaboration and the perceptions that women unfairly face. You also spoke about the importance of male allyship, and I'm wondering if you can speak to some of the most important ways the males in the audience can stand up for the women in their lives, both professionally but personally as well.
Yeah, it's a really great question, right? Male allyship is really important for the reason that most of our leaders are still male, right? Like that is the demographic, right? When we look up, we don't see enough women. We don't see enough representation there, right? So having men on your side is critical to making sure that more women get where we are, and then women have to then make sure that we're bringing other women with us. But for the men in the audience, I think you have to make sure that you are doing your part, which is not just supporting women in the office, but supporting women at home too, right? I've got 3 small kids. I've got a husband who also has a good career, and we've established a bunch of rules that aren't hierarchical at all, right? For example, if you create the conflict, you solve the conflict, right? He's in Latvia this week, right? But I was scheduled first. So you solve that conflict. You call your mom, I don't care who you call, but I'm free and clear. And so I think it's about approaching equality at home to enable us to be equals at work. But then also when you get into those positions, whether you're there now or in the future, you truly believe it. If you don't have a daughter, think about it if it was your daughter, right? What would you want your daughter? Would you want your daughter held back more than your son? Would you think your daughter wasn't as capable as your son? Would you put your son before your daughter for a promotion? So I think it's like if you can make those deeply personal connections when you're doing that, I think it's super important. But I also have some huge male allies in the audience, right? One of them doesn't have a daughter, but it's still your thought process that you bring to the table. And I think the only way that I can run a really large global R&D organization with mostly men is through the support of men who believe in me as a leader, who don't do the double bind, right? So there's a lot of hypocrisy. Well, is she not technical enough? Is she too assertive? And I think it's the men that stand up and fight for you when you're not there that are the ones that we need to surround ourselves with, and the ones that I want you to all become.
One thing I want to add there that I've noticed, I think one person at DraftKings must have given this tip to a male ally because I've seen it kind of proliferate. I think a common experience that women can have is if you voice an opinion or a thought or an idea and the room maybe is not acknowledging it, but then it gets parroted back by somebody else who's male on a meeting or in a subsequent meeting. When you notice that, calling attention to it and saying, yes, that was something that Mary suggested last meeting, I think it's really meaningful to be able to call that as you see it and acknowledge where our thoughts and ideas are coming from.
We probably have time for one more question. We have here on the right side.
Thank you. So continuing the conversation about collaboration and assertiveness, I guess my question is to anybody here on stage who can relate and give advice. But for me, because I'm early in career, I find myself really holding myself back when I speak. And I guess maybe also because as women, we're very hypersensitive to the mood and the vibes of the meeting and and just how everybody is feeling. I find myself using a lot more fluff, I guess, in my sentences. The way I speak, my intonations are so much more I sound more like a customer representative compared to because I'm supposed to be a product manager, but I feel like I'm speaking like a salesperson. I'm just trying really hard to keep the vibes a certain way. And I guess how do you unlearn that as a woman? Because I notice that the men in the meeting, they just speak so much more straightforward. They just spit the facts and they move on. But for me, I'm going this and that. And I just wanted to hear how you guys learn to unlearn that and speak more professionally and get your point across.
Do you want to take? A couple things come to mind for me. One is I've definitely benefited from coaching in my career. I think that can help. And I also think if your company offers any communication exercises like disc analysis and kind of conversational exercises that are surrounding that, I have found that very helpful to sort of separate myself from a communication style and have very real conversations with folks on my team about my style is this, I notice your style is that. These are different ways that we can communicate more effectively with each other. I find that those types of exercises help it to feel less personal, so you don't have to feel so attached to the way that you're communicating or sensitive about how you receive feedback. A couple things that come to mind for me.
I think it's also about the type of phrases you use, right? For instance, if you say, maybe we could do this versus I think we need to do this, right? And slight changes like that where you try to consciously use more decisive, firm phrases. You're still being respectful and collaborative, but you're not trying to be the customer service rep, as you said, right? But more of a product manager because you're the one giving them the requirements, right, at that stage. So watch what you're saying, and where you think you're speaking without confidence in what you're saying, maybe make those statements a little bit more decisive, right, to convey your intent.
Yeah, so I guess my advice would be first to have a little grace with yourself, right? As someone that's been in a lot of meetings, people of all genders say meaningless fluff and crap all the time, and it's not gender specific, I promise you, right? So as somebody that's on the opposite end of the spectrum, right, I'm too direct, and I say things too pointed. One of the things that has worked for me, though, is often when I know I'm feeling a little insecure at that moment, I will write it down before I actually say it, so that I'm very concise with my words, which are, I insert nicer words. So for you, it's write it down and be more poignant and remove some of those words to get directly to your point. But also have some grace. You're early in your career, and I think every single person can relate to that, right?
All right, amazing. There have been some really awesome questions. Thank you so much to our panelists for joining us this afternoon. Thank you all for being here. This has been great.
Thank you.